Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular council meeting for August 24th, 2026. I'd look for a mover and a seconder to call our meeting to order, please. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Cressman. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. We did not have a closed session today, so I will invite Councillor Wilkinson to introduce our territorial land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you. We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. And we also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I will now turn it over to CAO Wilmer to introduce a new face around the horseshoe.
Thank you very much, Mayor Salonen. We're very pleased to introduce Tracy Prince as the new Treasurer and Director of Financial Services for the Township of Wilmot. Tracy's joining us remotely tonight, and she's been on the job for about 2 weeks now and comes to us from the town of Amherstburg and also has previous experience at St. Clair Region Conservation Authority as well as the City of London. Tracy is a chartered professional accountant, also has an MBA, and brings a good combination of people leadership skills and technical skills. So we're very pleased to have Tracy join us as part of the team.
Thank you very much and welcome, Tracy. On to the adoption of the agenda. I believe Councillor Dunstall wanted to move that with an amendment. I'll turn it over to Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Yes, I want to make an amendment to remove correspondence 12.2 from the agenda.
Okay, that's been moved by Councillor Dunstall. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Cressman. Any questions or comments? So the motion is to remove 12.2 and then adopt the remaining agenda as presented. Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And that carries. On to, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Cressman?
Yes, I would like to declare a pecuniary interest on 16.4, the zone change along Gingrich Road. It's as a result of my oldest son, Garth, being CEO at Walter Fady, and they're doing the engineering work on the entire project.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, 14.6, I believe. It's for the Gingrich Road item, correct, Councillor? It's the Gingrich Road item?
Yes.
Okay, so that is 14.6. And that has been noted. We do have our minutes from the July 27th meeting as well as the August 13th special council meeting to be adopted as presented. May I have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Sadhu, seconded by Councillor Cressman.
Can I make a comment, please?
Absolutely.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, just I believe it's going to be changed, but it's noted that I'm absent. I guess I missed the opening on the 27th, but I was there for the closed meeting, and so I was here for the whole meeting except the initial motion.
I'm seeing clerks nodding to acknowledge that, so that will be updated. Thank you for making that note. Any other questions or comments on the minutes before us? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, and that carries unanimously. We do not have any public meetings this evening, but we do have a presentation. We get to see Tova twice in, I believe, the last 2 months. So I will invite up Tova Davidson and Stefan Nacho, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, to the podium to present on the new sustainability manager. So welcome to council.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here and to be back after It's been, I think, 6 weeks or 2 months. So nice to be here. For those who don't know, I'm Tova Davidson. I'm the Executive Director of SWR, Sustainable Waterloo Region. And I'm here just to introduce Stefan, a new partnership that has been formed between the Township of Wilmot and Wellesley, where together we have hired a sustainability manager to support your own work towards your operational sustainability and integration of community work through the climate action work, et cetera, as a staff person. The support that SWR is bringing is our own expertise to make sure that we are supporting the townships in this way. And it is a shared role with just a 1-year idea of let's give this a try and see how we can make some real progress. So the idea today is to introduce Stefan, give him a moment to introduce himself, and just to talk a little bit about what the priorities are at the very beginning and answer any questions the council may have.
Correct. Thank you, Tova. Yeah, nice to be here and working with the townships of Wilmot and Wellesley on that project, I would call it. So as you heard, my name is Stefan Knoche. I'm an architect and certified passive house designer, almost 2 decades experience in the field, worked on numerous retrofits, energy efficient buildings like passive houses. And yeah, the overall goal is to find opportunities for optimization and performance enhancements at the facilities of Wilmot Township. And in the first 6 months, I will focus on the GHG emissions, see where we sit in terms of emissions and water usage, and yeah, find hopefully some good areas to improve. And yeah, reporting constantly to the council. The idea is to report like every quarter to you guys. And yeah, if there's any questions, please let me know.
Wonderful. Well, welcome on board and thank you very much for coming today. I don't currently see any questions. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you through the chair. Welcome aboard. Glad you're here. I'm just curious. I realize it's very early going, but I'm wondering if in your past experience or even in maybe some of your research, if there's any sort of identifiable savings or operational improvements that you think you can find, or if what you anticipate those could be.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Wilkins. So I think we have good opportunities in the terms of water savings. That's my first assumption from seeing the data. And yeah, we will have to review the data, see the facilities, and then I can closer to or can say more about if there's any things that we can do.
I'll jump in as well, just to say that the other focus for us is to look at that data and where the physical opportunities are, and then to look at funding opportunities and to apply for those funding opportunities to enable some of those retrofits. So the capital cost could be mitigated by some of the funding opportunities, the high energy efficiency increasing within the buildings, then saving in operational as well.
Any other questions at this time, Council? Okay, seeing none, thank you again very much, Tova and Stefan, for joining us. This evening, we do have 3 delegations. You'll be called when we get to those appropriate parts in the agenda. We do have 1 item of correspondence. Did anybody want to speak to that? Okay, seeing none. We do have multiple items on our consent agenda. We will be pulling 13.3 to start, as we do have 2 individuals who have registered to speak on this. So I will start just making sure I'm following my notes here properly. So just for a note, 13.3 is the Petersburg Drinking Water System Local Improvement Bylaw. And as I said, we have 2 delegates who have registered. So our first one is Clive Woolner. Thank you for joining us today, Clive, and you will have 7 minutes.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this this whole system. When it was originally brought up, it was to be a looped system. That was what we were told that needed to be, because you couldn't have people at the end of a line. Now, the 2024 drawings show a loop system. but the 2026 drawings do not. And it's obvious to me and to most people that that's going to be connected to the regional water supply, because otherwise it's a dead end system all the way from Deerfield Court all the way around to the end of Snyder's Road. And I guess, why were there no meetings after the system was redesigned? Why wasn't it discussed with us? Why weren't the 26 people who are being forced and slammed onto this system not shown as being possible on that? It didn't even show us. You want us to come out and engage. Hey, I'll come out and engage. But you know what would be nice? It'd be nice if it wouldn't be hidden like it has been. And you can say, well, it was on the 2024 drawings, but I would hope, logic tells me, the new revised drawings of 2026 drawings would be the most accurate, which they were not. And they're going to tie into that system. The second thing is this whole problem was brought on by the Nipful water system. And it's been described as fair that these 26 properties pay. Well, what's fairness? They had 40, 50, 60, 70 years of not paying maintenance on the system. And I go out and spend 30,000 on a well and pump and treatment system. And then I have to pay for them as well. I don't consider that fair, but that's mine. And I got to say, our counselor has been of no assistance, because right from the get-go, his position has always been, if it's going to go, you're going to pay for it, period. No discussion, no nothing. I'm disappointed in that. I think it's a bad potential. And there was no time in this whole process was there any attempt to address the concerns of the 26. There's things that could have been done to, okay, let's say we pay $10,000. And then if we hook up in the next 15 years, we pay, starting off at 15,000, going down to zero. And it would have cost the others more. But I mean, the way it's done, the whole process of even trying to get a petition together is impossible, because there's 62 people who are saying, hey, if they pay, we're saving $10,000. Now, that's not coming out. That's coming out of my pocket. And to me, this is a service that has very little to no value to me, because I have a great source of water. Since there's such a willingness to, have this 26 people do this, I would say, Mr. Wilkinson, Your Honor, why don't you each throw 10,000 into it? Pay for it. We're paying for a service we don't need. Let you pay for it. Come on, let's everybody kick in some money. I guess it's a little different when it's not your money. I guess it's easy to spend other people's. I'm just saddened that there's been no attempt to address anything to do with these 26 people. And Chris, you've told people it's going to increase their property values, and you told another person it wouldn't increase their property values. Which is it? I'm a home builder. My wife's a realtor. Okay. Yeah, laugh. It's funny, isn't it?
Point of personal privilege.
Yes, I was going
Thank
to
you.
cut in. I would just remind you that when delegating, certainly valid to hear your perspective, and I appreciate your perspective, but please do not defam or call out council. That's part of our procedural bylaw when you're.
That's fine. I'm just telling it like it is. If someone says one thing and then says a different thing, if that's calling them out, I'm sorry. I apologize for that, because at the end of the day, it shows certain things about what type of people they are. I would like to say you don't do something about it, but given everything I've seen, the lack of communication, the lack of consideration for us, I have a feeling I've wasted my breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Clive, for joining us this evening and sharing your experience. Were there any questions of council at this point? Okay, seeing none. We also have Raul Derego, who's joining us this evening. Is Raul online? Okay, I don't currently see Raul in our chambers or online. If he comes later, we can address at that time. Calling Raul just one more time. Okay. All right. So the recommendation is that council dispense with item 13.3 separately as the recommended motion to be amended highlighted below. So it was the original circulated one and council has in front of them as well. But that the report IS-2026-19 Petersburg Drinking Water System Local Improvement Bylaw be received for information, and that the local improvement bylaw 26-60 Petersburg Local Improvement be passed as, and this is the new change, as amended to include Deerfield Extension in the description of the work. And then back to the regular motion, and that the treasurer return with the special charges bylaw at the culmination of the Petersburg project currently anticipated early in 2028. To get that on the floor, moved by Councillor Wilkinson. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Martin. And Councillor Wilkinson, you have a question or comment?
Thank you. Through the chair, there was a couple questions I actually wanted to just address for most of the residents in the affected area who did reach out, and I appreciate the correction on the bylaw to include Deerfield Extension, as that was missing initially. But Director Vanderwall, there was a question, and I know we've chatted about this, but for the public, just to understand the difference in cost between the original 62 and then the additional added homes, I think it was 23 or 25, whatever it was. But if you could just explain that difference in the costing, please.
Through the mayor, for the original 26 residents, there was preliminary investigation studies, the original connection to the system, including the water meters that were installed, that was shared among the original 62, I believe it is. The construction cost is what is being shared amongst, I believe it is 80 is the final number. So that is the difference.
Any other questions? Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, no other questions. I appreciate that. That's just, so it's those additional pieces in terms of the meter that is that cost difference between the two. So obviously, if the homes that were added after the fact, if they choose to meter, that would be part of that cost that they would have to cover at the time.
Through the mayor, it is anticipated that if a home would connect afterwards, yes, they would have to do the plumbing permit, put a meter in, those components. Some of the components for the original study would not need to be redone, but that was the original 62.
Thank you. And through the chair, just to answer a couple other questions. So one of the other things that was brought up as I was discussing with some residents in the area. So the drawings itself are showing the full redesigned system, including the looping onto Snyder's Road in Notre Dame. Phase 1 is to begin this year, and that's for Snyder's Road in Notre Dame, correct? And then phase 2 would be next year inside the traditional service area.
Through the mayor, we've been having discussions with the contractor. They are now anticipating starting next year, and they believe they can do the majority of the works next year. So it is probably 2027. We do note that due to the requirements under the local improvement, we had delayed the contractor. So we are working with them to get a better schedule, ensure what's going on, but that is what they have indicated at this time.
Thank you. And through the chair, if I may, one more time, just to sort of provide some context and explanation for anyone who may be unfamiliar. Traditionally, and I know that I've had this conversation with staff and residents, but when infrastructure at the municipal level passes in front of a home, then it is traditionally paid for by the homeowner. And a lot of new developments would typically see that in the form of development charges and would be paying essentially for these services to go in. So I know that in many cases, at least precedent setting, in my opinion, across Ontario, we see a lot of this, whether it be sewage or water hookups that essentially existing homes now have access to a new service and they pay for it. Whether or not they choose to hook up to it, ultimately, I guess, is at the determination of the homeowner. So that's all I'll say on that, but thank you for your work.
Any other questions or comments on this, council? Seeing none, I'll call the vote on that. It's been moved and seconded, so all those in favor, that carries unanimously. And then we do have the remaining items on our consent agenda, which are 13.1, 13.2, and 13.2. Did anybody want to pull either of these items before voting on them? Not seeing that, may I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Martin. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. On to our reports for this evening. The first report recommendation is that report CAO-2026-25 Strategic Action Plan Update be received for information. May I have a mover for this? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Sadoo. And I will now turn it over to CAO Wilmer to present this report.
Thank you very much, Mayor Salonen. This is the third update we've given on the strategic action plan over the last number of months. And the number of complete actions is up to 24 now, up from 16 when last we reported to council. And there are 6 items there that we've highlighted as having made significant progress. I'll just briefly touch on those. One is the communication strategy refresh. Another is the adoption of the official plan. There was also the approval of the Ontario Transit Investment Fund, a grant of 3.4 million for improved transit to the 4 townships in Waterloo Region. The service delivery review, implementation plan, and the naming rights and sponsorship policy. In addition to that, when the report was written, it was our intention that the first phase of the long-term financial plan be presented tonight. And after the report was written, but before the agenda was released, we determined that it really wasn't ready yet. And we thought that rather than bringing a not quite ready project for discussion, we would defer that until it's more fully ready. And we take responsibility for that. KPMG had done everything we had asked of them, but it was the township's inputs that were holding matters back.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on this item? Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salomon, this isn't so much a question as an affirmation. When I go through this and see the work that is being done and has been completed, I appreciate that work. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments then? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, through the chair. I appreciate the explanation and the update on the long-term financial plan and capital plan. My hope was that we would see that before the end of this term, but understand it is difficult and you want to make sure you get it right. I did have a question regarding the ERP project. I know we've talked about this at length, and we've already earmarked that 300,000 for it. So just wondering what's driving that increase in cost up to $500,000 and how we plan to tackle this in the future, because I know this has been hanging over us for a number of years.
Through you, Mayor Salomon and Councillor Wilkinson, I can try to attempt an answer for you. The ERP project, you may recall, there was a pre-budget approval last summer actually for $500,000 for that software. It did go through the RFP process. Bids were received. The bids indicated that the budget was not going to be sufficient. In addition, as you're aware, there's some internal processes that need to be reviewed and refined prior to trying to implement new software. Implementing new software doesn't solve any problems if your processes aren't ideal. So the first step that we're approaching is to refine those processes internally, and then probably reissue an RFP. Through the budget process, you would receive additional information as to the anticipated cost, but certainly that those monies, the 500,000 plus the monies that were, I believe, 130,000 relative to project management of that project, those would remain in the capital budget. Some of them would have been spent on the project manager, but the bulk of those funds would retain until future report.
Any other questions or comments, Council? Councillor Cressman.
It's through you, Mayor, it's always dangerous to ask a question which you're formerly ignorant of, but that usually doesn't stop me. So the question relates to some of the discussion we had in Ottawa at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario about AI and whether we have systems and we are adapting to systems that are would work with AI into the future. And so you always worry when you adopt a certain software that it may be looking backwards rather than looking forward. And so I guess that's where the question, I know you had discussions, you understand that City of Kitchener's working with a software provider with AI, streamlining answers to questions, etc. So as long as you have systems that mesh, again, my ignorance is showing, but obviously I'm just asking the question out of a way of saving dollars to the future as compared to saying we have something that's obsolete.
Who wants to take that one? Yeah, Wilmer can start.
I'm tempted to ask AI to draft an answer for me so that I can quickly review that and give you something that's impressive that I may or may not have created myself. It's early days yet. I think that's no surprise to anyone. We do have Copilot for our staff. The take up on it is limited, but we're also aware that people either in their personal lives or related to work are starting to use other AI tools as well. And so it's something we want to encourage people to use with caution. And we're working on a policy shortly that will give people guidance as to which are platforms that are allowable and which ones are to be avoided.
And I see Tracy might want to jump in on this as well.
Through you, Mayor, to members of council. Yes, that's always a consideration when we're looking at software, is to make sure that it is agile enough to manage what else is coming down the pipes with regards to technology. I think there is a lot of process improvements available through AI, but again, we have to be very cautious with using it and which AI tools we use and which ones we basically control as well.
Thank you, Director Prince. Anybody wanted to add anything else? Nope. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor in accepting the action plan update for information? And that's carried unanimously. On to 14.2, and this is the work plan update for August 2026, also to be received for information. If I could get a mover and a seconder for this. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Cressman, and I will turn it back over to CAO Wilmer.
Thank you again, Mayor Salonen. So in the work plan for 2026, there are 71 initiatives. 24 are complete, 39 are in progress. I won't list the 24. They're in the report, but we've also highlighted the report so that any matters that have changed since the last time we reported to council are highlighted in yellow. So it for members of the community or for council, you can quickly see what's been updated since the last report. And with that, happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions or comments on this one? We'll go to Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I guess I'm affirmative Steve tonight, but I would like to, not a but and, I would like to make an affirmation on this as well. I really appreciate these charts and how it shows the work and clearly outlines and things that aren't done or that have not been completed. It's clearly there. So I appreciate you being candid on that and the information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. And I don't think it's a bad thing that you're affirming, considering when we started this term, we weren't getting these kinds of reports. So I think it's good that they're valid and we're providing that information. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, through the chair. To CAO Wilmer, given I know that we are approaching maybe the end of your term, sort of heading into next year, is the plan to sort of accomplish as much of this as possible and prioritize some of those pieces through the upcoming budget process as well?
Through the mayor, in a word, yes. So much of this work we believe will be completed in the calendar year. Some projects will carry on through into 27. And in fact, there's a fair number of initiatives in here that are maybe not so much project based. It is part of our ongoing work. So it's work that will continue on. So I don't know that there's going to be that many budget implications for this. This is mostly work that's underway that we're doing with in-house resources.
Any other questions or comments on this, council? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. On to 14.3, and this is the budget level of service for management of IT. The recommendation is that this report be received for information and that council refer consideration of managed IT services to the 2027 budget process, subject to the provision of a detailed assessment from staff. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Martin. And I will now turn it over to Deputy CAO and Director of Corporate Services, not Services, Harold Okrafka.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. Very briefly, the purpose of this report is simply as a placeholder to the 2027 budget process, similar to other ones that you've seen over the last number of months, to highlight that we did move from a in-house supervisor of IT in 2025 to a managed IT service contract in the fall of 2025. That contract is almost at the 1-year mark. It was a 2-year contract. And so prior to next fall, we will need to make a decision whether to continue with the contract and extend it, whether to modify that contract, or whether to bring the management of IT services in-house as it was prior to the contract. So it's simply a placeholder report to identify that will need to be a consideration. We will need to take an action in 2027 and budget accordingly. Hopefully the report at the budget time will provide you with all the details of pros, cons of the managed service versus in-house and the costing associated with that.
Questions or comments? Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through Mayor. Deputy CAO Okrafka. When the report comes back, have we been able to, or will we be able to show the different service levels from having it done in-house versus having it contracted out?
Through you, Mayor Salonen, yes.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, to even piggyback on Councillor Dunstall's question, I'm wondering if even off the top of your head, just for the sake of folks knowing, like, has there been any measurable improvements or any deficiencies that you've encountered at all, even just at a very high level?
Through you, Mayor Salonen and Councillor Wilkinson, I would say there's notable enhancements in our infrastructure requirements and identifying best practices that we perhaps hadn't been following. So there's been a number of those high level things that definitely have been beneficial. At the same time, I would suggest that at a staff level, the customer service, the in-house aspect of that is probably on the lower end of staff expectations. So there's a balance. We're getting higher end needs met, but probably the day-to-day, it's a bit more of a challenge by having only one person in-house versus 2 people in-house, but there's trade-offs. And that's the trade-off that council will ultimately need to decide what the most important component of that is.
Any other questions or comments on this? Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I have noticed with this contract, the additional requirements for training. We on council were also asked to participate in that training, and that was comparable to another organization that I work for, where they do something very similar, and so it seems like that was a good move. I also know there was a time I needed some help, and I happened to be working late on a Friday night, and I was able to make a phone call. Because of this contract, they have the 24-hour service that if we have full-time staff, we don't have access to that service. Having said that, when we had 2 full-time staff, I was very happy with their work. I'm not in any way complaining about that, but I do notice this with the larger structure, the benefits that can bring.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. On to 14.4, and this is the zone change application for 148 to 166 Peel Street in New Hamburg. The recommendation is that this report be received for information and that council approve the zoning change application 07-26 as set out in the draft bylaw included as attachment E to this report. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Sadoo, seconded by Councillor Martin. And I will turn it over to Director Martin to introduce this report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Solomon. I'll explain briefly the report. We did have an extensive discussion at the previous council meeting about this. The proposal continues to be the adaptive reuse of the Hamburg felt boot building in New Hamburg. The proposal includes removal of a portion of the rear of the building, maintaining the three-story kind of heritage piece, and reconstructing a 4 to 6 story addition in the rear of the building to accommodate commercial on the main floor and 49 residential units. At the public meeting, the primary discussion points were regarding parking and the height of the building. So since that meeting, staff did, as we promised, would go through and look at the downtown parking availability compared to what we had noted in the 2016 study that we had undertaken. And the consensus in that count is that ultimately there was a minor increase of about 6 spaces in the core. There were some losses in some area, but the increase in parking in the Wilmot Street parking lot was the primary factor increasing that number. So ultimately, there is still ample parking available in the core is the conclusion that we've drawn from that. As we noted in the 2016 study, a lot of concerns we hear from people is proximity, right? So can you see your destination from where you park? And that seems to be the ongoing concern when we talk about parking in downtown New Hamburg. One of the advantages of this application is that you'll be able to see the Wilmot Street parking lot from this redevelopment. So the midpoint access that's proposed through this redevelopment will have line of sight to the Wilmot Street parking lot. So we anticipate that better utilization of that facility will actually alleviate maybe some parking on Peel Street that currently accesses the services at Puttycombe House. But certainly will complement if nothing else. So there continues to be ample parking available to service the commercial needs. From a residential perspective, the proposal provides 1 parking space per dwelling unit, which from a staff level, we feel is appropriate in this location. There is opportunity for walking to amenity areas, and ultimately the owner of the property dictates who lives in the building. So if they don't want to sell or rent a unit to a property owner that has 2 cars, then they don't need to do that. And it may not be the appropriate place to be located if you do have 2 cars. So there is that kind of fallback if we're wrong on our assumptions that the owner of the property has the ultimate authority and opportunity to control. From a height perspective, staff have noted previously that we feel that the design of this site does complement the core, maintaining the current 3-story building, having the taller building set back to the midpoint of the property, is somewhat reflective of industry, right? The taller pieces of industrial buildings often were central to those sites, evidenced by the taller stack on the felt boot factory right now. So certainly we feel the developer has done a good job in providing a redevelopment that complements the core. We did circulate the Heritage Committee, and at the previous Heritage meeting, the committee did endorse the proposal, as noted in the report. So they have indicated they would like to work with the owner to see if there's pieces that could be reclaimed from demolition, and certainly those conversations can continue to happen. But the important piece is the committee to take a perspective on the development, and we're supportive. I will leave my comments at that because I think those are the primary discussion points previously, but certainly I'm here to answer questions, and the owners of the property, I believe, are also in attendance as well.
We'll go to Councillor Cressman first.
Through you, Mayor, to Director Martin. I was looking at the drawings, especially of the parking, and wondering if guests would come in Peel Street, whether they could go across the front of the proposed building, drop off passengers, and then exit onto Wilmot Street and park in the Wilmot Street parking lot. Because I was informed by someone this week that there wouldn't be exits on either side of Jackson Square. So I could interpret an exit in one of the drawings, I could not in the other. So I was just wondering whether that was blind on the side or whether it was accessible to Wilmot Street.
Through Marisol, and certainly the design is conceptual at this point, but as proposed, there wouldn't the Jackson Plaza or whatever would not have access to Wilmot Street directly. The Felt Boot site has two-way traffic, so connecting both Peel and Wilmot Street. So you would be able to come through. The plaza would be disconnected from Wilmot Street though.
Through you, Mayor, that's what I guess I understood that the Jackson Square on the north side of Jackson Square was not, but I was wondering on the south side of Jackson Square between that and the Felt Booth had access, and I had the impression it was, and somebody was trying to tell me it didn't.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. And Director Martin and I have had many a conversation about this, and I don't think it's a big surprise where I stand on height and how it impacts the downtown and how it impacts our skyline. I did also want to mention that, you know, afterthought, and I understand that the parking is an issue and people like to see, you know, from the establishment that they go to where their vehicle is and vice versa. But having been to Kitchener recently, and having to park in an underground parking and then walk several blocks to where I wanted to go, made me realize that it isn't quite so bad. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair. I mean, we've discussed this extensively at the public meeting as well, and generally I'm very much in favor of what's being proposed here. One point of interest to me was reading the report when it was mentioned that there would be agreements to basically ensure that the parking that is designated at the 144 Peel Street site would remain with the residential development. So I'm just curious how that will play out, given that it's not necessarily going to be severed as one and combined.
Thank you, through Mayor Simon. So there's opportunity through parking agreements and or site plan agreements I can think of one other example where we've had parking on an adjacent site through the site plan agreement registered on both properties. It tied the use of that parking for permanency. So ultimately an agreement registered on each property that says those spaces are available to, you know, X property, and then vice versa, so that it basically ties them together, but doesn't force them to merge the properties together. So it gives that permanency.
Councillor Stu.
Thank you. Just a comment, overall, I like the project. I think it's a overall positive investment to our community. I know parking has been a hot topic, but every time I've driven by on Wilmot Street and seen our municipal parking lot, I haven't counted more than 5-6 cars off the top of my head. Municipal parking is a public asset, and if it's consistently underused, we need to support it by having nearby developments so we can maximize that investment. And when comparing to other municipalities in downtown cores, whether it be Stratford or Elmira, it's a catch-22. We want to have people downtown, the businesses want to thrive. But a sign of a good downtown is also if it's thriving and you're not finding good parking or you're not finding parking, that's a sign of people are down there and they want to be there. Just my own self owning a small business in town, having to do deliveries. I never once had an issue delivering pizzas downtown. Even if I need to park for a quick 30 seconds to get out. And my driver's never had an issue, but obviously when you're in a downtown core, it's never supposed to be easy to find parking, but I'm not necessarily saying it's super hard either. As far as the building heights go, I've always been a proponent of if they are placed in the proper areas, so along regional roads in the downtown settings, and if done tastefully like this property is, I think it can be bode well for the township.
Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I actually did want to just verify with Director Martin, and I've had a few people ask me this, and I'm 99.9% sure that this is correct. But all of the parking spots, 39 parking spots, whatever it is, 49, they are already owned. They are not municipal parking spots. They are already owned by the owners of this particular building, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this, councillors? Councillor Cressman.
This is anecdotal, but if you want to go to a Yankee Stadium and stay in the Bronx, the solution to parking Saturday night is double parking on the road, even if it's raining. So anyhow, it's just,
I'm not certain that we're approving double parking in downtown New Hamburg, but thank you for the anecdote, councillor. I think everyone has said what they'd like to on this matter. I just want to say I think this is a really exciting proposal and new chapter, both for the old felt boot factory and for downtown as we're continuing to see it be rejuvenated. And I think that this is also filling the call for some people who want to be able to downsize but remain in Wilmot. I really think that the apartment component will speak to that. And personally, I look forward to the spa. Granted, should it be approved and built. So I just wanted to note that I think this is a really great investment for the community. And thank you to the owners for bringing it forward. Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, it looks like I was the only one that has not made a comment, and I didn't want my silence to be seen as negative. I think it's a great project. I'm very happy that it's coming. I know that there are people concerned about parking, and I'm not in any way trying to reject their comments. As I stated in the last meeting, I'm happy to continue working with them on that. But thank you to this project coming forward.
With that, I will call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. On to 14.5, and that is the zone change application 06-26, Neville Street, New Hamburg, also known as Tri-County Mennonite Homes. The recommendation is that the report be received for information and that council approve the zone change application to rezone the subject lands from a zone 4 residential to a zone 11, and zone 11 open space to a zone 12 institutional and zone 11 open space. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Sadhu, seconded by Councillor Cressman, and I will turn it back over to Director Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. Again, this application was discussed at length at the previous council meeting at the public meeting for the application. The proposal hasn't changed since then. It proposes to change the zoning of a current zone 4 property, which allows for residential apartment building, to zone 12 institutional, which would allow for a long-term care facility that's proposed. There were certainly discussions about height on the application. Zone 12 does not have a maximum height requirement, so that's why that doesn't appear as part of the requests in the application. The side yard setback increases with the height of a building, and in this instance, the side yard setback exceeds what would otherwise be required for a building of the height proposed. That does not doesn't say that there isn't an opportunity for consideration of redesigns through the detailed design of the property, because height isn't being proposed one way or the other with this application. So it provides flexibility to the ultimate design of the site. That's generally the way it works with an institutional zone. We have other properties that have those same flexibility for height. Ultimately, the applicant did review opportunities for the site to look at modifying the footprint of the building, and based on restrictions from the Grand River Conservation Authority for slope stability and flood issues on the site. Ultimately, there isn't sufficient building envelope to expand the site and continue to meet the requirements of the province's long-term care home design manual that talks about residential home areas. So there was some discussion about the previous meeting about that. And they had evaluated that through the design of the site. So where they're proposing parking closer to Albert Street, ultimately to continue to provide ample parking for the site, there isn't a building envelope available in that area to accommodate kind of a smaller building, or a shorter building rather, with a bigger footprint. And so the applicant is here to speak to more of those technicalities as necessary, but it is something that was evaluated through the design, and the application that's been brought forward is based on that, the work that they've undertaken to determine availability. The parking is more than what's required for the site, but even with reducing the parking, it doesn't create a new building envelope to support what's needed for the property. So from a staff perspective, we feel it is appropriate for the area. We think it is good for the community in terms of investment, economic development, job creation, and supporting the continuation of transition of life stages in the community, right? Giving the opportunity for people to continue to live in New Hamburg. So from that perspective, we've don't have any concerns and certainly are recommending approval of the application.
Thank you. With that, we do have one registered delegate, so I will invite them up to speak and then council can discuss and ask questions after. Our registered delegation is Brian Schatz. Thank you very much, Brian, for coming today. And I believe that you are representing the applicant, so you will have 7 minutes.
Good evening. I feel I'll be repeating a lot of what Mr. Martin has just said, but I'll go through my notes anyway. I'm Brian Schatz with Facet Design Studio. We're located in Waterloo, and I'm here as authorized agent for Tri-County Mennonite Homes, who own the property located at Neville and Victoria Streets in New Hamburg. And I'm speaking to that zone change application 06/26. In the audience is Dr. Stephen Harrison, who is the CAO of Tri-County Mennonite Homes. Also, Tri-County Mennonite Homes is a nonprofit organization. It's been providing needed services in the Township of Wilmot since 1968, quite some time. Discussions have been had with township staff along with other commenting agencies related to this specific project, with many usual questions having been considered or addressed in the previous application that was for a seniors apartment building. It puts us at a point of eliminating some of the questions when you come forward at this stage. We have an understanding, staff has an understanding of how and when and where this can go forward from here. Important to note that the region of Waterloo, Grand River Conservation Authority, and ANOVA have all confirmed they have no concerns with this application. Township staff are recommending approval, as you've just heard again, of this application. In addition to many construction jobs will be created over 4 years, Tri-County will also be creating between 500 and 600 new full-time permanent jobs with this facility in the community, which is considerable in a community of this size, along with other economic benefits. The application to be decided tonight by council is to allow construction of a new 224-bed long-term care facility on this property. In 2019, zoning approval was given by Township Council to construct an approximately 97 unit seniors apartment on this site. But since then, the direction of the board of Tri-County Mennonite has taken to focus more exclusively on senior care facilities. There's a great need. It should be noted that the current site zoning permits multiple unit residential uses, and the proposed zoning is also for residential use under institutional that permits the long-term care. This is all that's being applied for. No other zoning matters require changes to the current township zoning bylaw. As noted in the township report, this application meets the current and new official plan requirements. There's a great need for more of these facilities as a significant percentage of the population continues to move into the latter stages of life. Tri-County recognizes their current facilities will not meet the demand, and as such, this is a wonderful opportunity for Wilmot to add to the facilities that will allow more senior residents to remain in their own community. The question is no longer, and I quote this from Dr. Harrison, the question is no longer whether the demand for long-term care will grow. The evidence demonstrates that it will. The real question is whether communities like ours will have sufficient modern, high-quality, mission-driven capacity to meet the need. Investments such as this NIFU project ensure that Tri-County Mennonite is prepared to serve the next generation of seniors while strengthening the sustainability of Ontario's healthcare system, end quote. Tri-County Mennonite and Wilmot Township are both fortunate to have been awarded the bed allotment from the ministry for this use. Not everybody gets it. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration on this matter, and I'm here to answer any questions that your council may have in this application.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shantz. Are there questions of Mr. Shantz while he's here? We'll go to Councillor Dunstall first.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm not sure if you can answer this, Mr. Shantz, but there are 200, and I know that they touched briefly on this, but there are 253 parking spots. And I know it's easier to go up, but I'm just not quite sure. There was a mention about Grand River Conservation and going out with the footprint, but I'm just not sure that that has been answered to my satisfaction, because I do have a lot of residents that live in that area and they're concerned. And please understand that I totally understand the need and the economic benefits. I get all of that with a mother-in-law who's been waiting over 2 years. So I understand the importance, but I still have an issue with that height. We have 4 townships in Waterloo Region, and I've double checked. There isn't one of them that has a building that's even close to this height. And so I was really hoping that you would reconsider, or there would be something that we could do, not to reduce the beds, I understand that, but to widen the footprint so that we could lower that height by even 1 story.
Through the chair to Councillor, we spoke about this in the last scenario. I want to try to make sure I answer your questions on it. The one was about height in other townships. I've been a resident of Woolwich Township all my life. Elmira currently has a height provision for 8 stories in the downtown area. There has recently been built a 6-story apartment building within the settlement of Elmira. I think as we all grapple with what's changing in our society, it takes a little time to adjust to the fact of intensification versus sprawl. This community is well aware about concerns about farmland. So this is one way that with the anticipated growth within a community, going up is the choice and repurposing of buildings is the choice versus sprawling wider. So in this particular application, as I explained in the last meeting, the residential housing areas, the 32 beds, which is basically mandated by the province and is the only efficient way to make it work from a staffing and administration standpoint. That is what is taking us and putting the number of stories on top of it. So the ground floor is in fact for the services for all of the building. The basement, the lower level, that's the background and staffing areas in this particular case. And then rising from level 2 to 8 is the actual residential housing areas times 32, which gets to your 224 for the number of beds. This is the minimum optimum thing that we're looking at. And I might add that while it's not Wilmot, there is a proposal that isn't formalized yet, and I'm not part of it, but there's a similar application to my understanding that is forthcoming in one of the other townships also. So we can't reduce, we can't put it beside. You spoke about the number of parking. We exceed zoning minimums for parking. And I tell all my clients for, as you can tell by the white hair, a lot of years, zoning requirements for parking is minimums. It doesn't mean it operates functionally. So in this particular case, with the staffing changes and multiple shifts, they are staffed 24 hours a day. You need to accommodate your staff arriving before the other staff leave. So that creates more. What we've shown with the 253 spaces, that'll be fine-tuned through the site plan process and working with staff. We're not anticipating more. If we can have less and still make sure we operate without having people parking on the street, staff here would like to see their destination too, as I've heard from the previous application.
Councillor Dunstall again.
Thank you. And I did want to make a comment, but I don't want to hold him up, so I will hold that in case anyone else needs to speak.
Okay, and yes, we'll go for questions for Mr. Shantz first, and then we can go back to questions for staff and comment in general. Councillor Cressman was first, and then Councillor Wilkinson.
Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Shantz. The 32 is the common number, and it, as I understand it, and again, my knowledge base is Winston Park because my father-in-law was in there, and they have a hub in the center and the cafeteria, and then they go out down the halls and in a wing type of format. And again, it creates efficiencies, and each one tends to be a community name in Wilmot Township, as if I'm using the Winston Park approach. And the idea is to have as many residents aging in a facility close to their home community as possible, with familiarity with names that can resonate with them. And so I look around the horseshoe here, and I'm likely the one closest to the age bracket that is going to be looking for that type of service. And unfortunately, there wasn't a spot available in New Hamburg when either of my parents required it. And so I guess all of us wish we can age in place at home, but when the time comes, depending on our medical challenges, we would hope there's an opportunity. If both of us as a couple walk in the front door, there's an opportunity for us to be at least in close proximity to one another, that we don't have to drive up to 250 kilometers to a separate facility to visit a loved one. And looking at the data in Ottawa, two presentations, the waiting list that currently is existing and the projection of the curve, it isn't flattening down or going down with the baby boom generation. It's accelerating to 2050. There is going to be an extended need for facilities. And if we can provide those to people who built this community over time, I think it's a service well rendered. So maybe that's a comment rather than a question. I apologize, but I'm pretty passionate about this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilkinson, was this a question for Mr. Shantz?
Thank you. Through the chair, there's a lot that's already been said, and I echo the same sentiments and thoughts as my colleague, Councillor Dunstall. I think I said it before, and ultimately it really comes down to the 8 stories is the biggest issue for me. I want the beds, I want the jobs, I want the tax revenue, I want to see the long-term care opportunities for local residents and everyone. But ultimately, it's just looking at the scale of the building, and I feel it's going to be at a place as proposed. And I know you mentioned the design requires this, and you can't change it. I would say that's a great challenge for this community and region as a whole to take on. I'm sure if we really tapped into the right areas, we'd be able to come up with something that may be agreeable. But my general thought on this is that I'm very much in favor of what you're trying to do. I'd definitely be in favor of the zoning change, but I'm just asking, please find a way, if we can, to lower the height down to 6 stories and make it more agreeable with what the rest of the community looks like. My only fear is that approving 8 stories here means the next one's going to be 10 to 12 or whatever it happens to be. I don't want to get into that at all. So more so a comment, really no question, just please try and find a way if possible.
Any other questions for Mr. Shantz? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you again very much, Mr. Shantz, for joining us this evening. Now I can open it up for council if you have questions of staff or comments in general. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through Mayor. And again, please understand, I am really supportive of this, and I get the need. Perhaps this is for Director Andrew, Director Martin. Having an 8-story building, and I think it's 9 stories when with the elevation changes. What does that do for someone who comes in here and wants to put in an apartment? I understand that zoned for institutional has no height limit. I get that. But do we run into an issue with the OLT with someone coming in and saying, you're stopping me from building an 8-story when you already have an 8-story building in your township? Is that something that we're going to run into? Because Lord knows we don't need a whole bunch of, not 8-foot, sorry, 8-story buildings. You know, one of the things that people said when we did the strategic plan was they said it was important to keep the rural feel. They were very adamant about that. And again, we're not looking at sprawl here. We would not look at, I would never suggest that. So suggesting that, you know, we don't do sprawl, we go up 100%, yes. But that wasn't the case here. I mean, the land is there, it's yours. But Director Martin, if you could answer that question for me, please. And then I will not speak on this again. I will just vote. Thank you.
All right, through Mayor Solomon. So a couple of points there. We have had discussions about this, and ultimately one decision doesn't mean that the next one is looked at equally. Like it's discussion needs to occur on the merits of the application and the location. We did introduce policies within the new official plan that council adopted that do have provisions in there that speak to 7 stories and above. The process by which you would need to go through to justify it makes sense. So we have included additional language for applications going forward. In terms of what may happen at the OLT, I would expect that the OLT probably won't be concerned about what's happened already. They would probably suggest that 8 stories isn't that tall and approve it. But regardless of that, when it comes to planning decisions, they're technically not precedent setting. So they have to, every application has to be considered upon its own individual merits. So in theory, if the OLT is considering an application, they may look at what's in the area and what's been approved before, but technically a decision that's made in one case doesn't mean that the same decision has to be made in the second case. So there is no suggestion that because this is approved that should someone make an application, it's not approved, it would go to the OLT, that would automatically happen because of that. But it could influence the decision for sure. But my suggestion is that in the scope of height and densities, 8 stories probably isn't, when we're dealing with an OLT decision, wouldn't be considered a tall building. So I don't expect that that would really come up as a concern in that. But ultimately, short story long, the answer is any decision made here doesn't automatically mean that the same decision is made in another location.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, looking at Chief Pipe, question for you. And this is before your time, but there's been fire trucks that have been discussed for a long period of time. I'm curious, a building of this height, how does this affect your department and what's required on your end to satisfy the safety and other concerns?
Through the mayor. One of the things I need to comment on is there are high buildings throughout the province, and a lot of places don't have aerial devices that'll reach the top of their high buildings. We do need an elevated device as a municipality, and I can give you a lot of really good reasons why we do, but we don't limit the height of our buildings based on the height of our elevated device.
Any other questions or comments, council? Councillor Stu.
Thank you. I've been debating this in my mind. I've had a conversation with some residents who flat out told me, you better approve this. I don't care how tall it is or how big it's going to be. I did have the conversation with them saying, listen, it doesn't guarantee that if it is built here that you get to stay here, but they understand that. Overall, I think it's a project that we need. It helps bring in jobs for subcontractors, et cetera, and ongoing. So I don't know if the building height, and I do sympathize with the building height, and I do understand that it could be potentially a slippery slope, but I don't know if that is enough for me to vote down this report just because of the good it brings. I hope there is potentially a compromise in the site planning phase where maybe if we can get it 1 story lower or rejig it somehow, but at this moment in time, I would be in favor of it.
We'll go to Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I echo Councillor Sadoo's comments. I have residents telling me that it's a good thing. I've said that some people are concerned about the height and they're very surprised by that, wondering why people would be concerned about the height. I realize Councillor Wilkinson and Councillor Dunstall are talking to people that are opposed to the height, and there are people in the township who are not opposed to the height. So I personally think it's a good thing.
Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, Mayor, and maybe I was remiss not asking the question when Mr. Shantz was at the podium. But it's my understanding the current Nithview home is going to be redeveloped into some type of apartments, and the 160 beds are going to be the long-term care. And then with this additional facility, it becomes an integrated facility where hopefully couples can walk in the front door, and then as they age, and this happened with my father-in-law and mother-in-law, as they age, one required long-term care, the other didn't. And currently the environment is such that they may be placed a distance apart. In my in-laws' case, they had been at Fairview in Cambridge. My mother-in-law got placed in Kitchener, and at 88, my father-in-law drove every day to see her from Cambridge to Kitchener till she passed. So I guess I look at this and say we have people who've decided to retire in Morningside. We have people who decided to retire in Stonecroft. And if one of them requires long-term care, this gives them an opportunity. If they both choose to downsize, they may go through the Cressman facility initially and then on to an apartment at Nithview. And then eventually, if one requires long-term care, you have an integrated system that hopefully with the additional beds will give them an opportunity here. So to my mind, to have these additional beds, to have the opportunity of having an integrated system. One of the first questions I asked at AMO in London years ago was, this isn't rocket science. If you walk in the front door as a couple, it should be the goal to make sure that you can both age in place depending on your needs as a couple. And so I guess that's why I'm strongly in favor, and I'm celebrating the opportunity that we have a nonprofit that's coming forward to take the lead on a project like this.
Thank you, Councillor. I know a lot of that was a comment, but you did kind of have a question about beds. It would be up to council's discretion because we technically need to waive the procedural bylaw, but Dr. Harrison, who is the executive director, is in the audience and could probably speak to your question about the old beds. But again, I'm in council's hands as to if you want to allow him to come up. Is there anyone opposed to that? No? Okay, with that, Dr. Harrison, not to put you on the spot, but if you'd like to speak to that.
Thank you, Mayor. Never on the spot. The board of directors hasn't come up with a final decision on what we're going to do with the current Nithview long-term care beds in the building that's there. We have determined a couple of things. One is that we're not tearing it down. It will be repurposed. We have invested in it over the last 10 years or so to ensure its engineering stability, and the building has a lot of life left in it. So we're going to make sure we do that. To your comment about couples living together, or we call it a campus of care. It's okay. This is my world, so I can use that language. The campus of care model we already have on the site. So we have independent living. We have independent living both in an apartment, in a tower, as well as in townhomes and sixplexes already on the site. Independent living is just what it sounds like. It is housing for seniors. It has very limited services. They are welcome to join us for meals and be part of programming that's going on, but generally it's like renting an apartment. We also have a retirement home living, and currently in our retirement home, we have partners of individuals who are living in long-term care. So to your point, there is no kilometers to be driven. There are steps to be taken down a air conditioned or heated hallway, and you can spend time with your loved one. What we're looking to do is to continue to expand that model on our campus. It's in my mind, my personal opinion, it is probably one of the best models of senior supports and care that you can have. And in addition to that, the green space that is down behind the building is down in the valley behind is a wonderful space for residents to view into, enjoy the wildlife that's there, but also to we're working collaboratively with the township on a couple of different ideas for creating walking pathways through there, not only for our residents, although it's on private land, but certainly opening it up for the community to enjoy. My desperate plea to everyone that I speak to is that when you see a long-term care home or you see a seniors care community, it is not a place to avoid. It is a place to embrace. It is a place to come to. It is a place to make part of your journey, not just the destination, but part of where you go to. And our residents love it. We have child care groups in the area that come walking through our areas to talk to our seniors and use the paths that we have currently. We hope to expand that. So the model of care that we're looking to implement on that campus is expanding due to long-term care needs, but with the emphasis on more than just long-term care. It is about engagement with the community and bringing the community in, as well as allowing our residents to go out into the community which they belong to. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harrison. I do think Councillor Cressman has a question for you now that you're at the podium, though.
To that end, I believe on the 18th of September, you have a barbecue that we as council have been invited to your facility. I saw it in my inbox today, so.
You would have seen that, yes. So thank you for that. This is not a promotional plug, but on the 18th of September, long-term care homes across Ontario are actually celebrating what we call Long-Term Care Day, and it is an opportunity for anyone, councillors, anyone in the audience, staff, to come out and see all the wonderful things that we do at our home. The details of what is being planned have not been shared with me, but it sounds like there's going to be a barbecue, so that sounds like fun. But it is an opportunity to come out and engage and see the new building that's going on right now, get a idea of what's coming. And that's only 10, 11 months from now. We're supposed to be opening that building up, so we're looking forward to that. And then engage with the seniors who live there. So yes, keep your calendars open on the 18th if you can.
Thank you very much. The only thing I'll warn folks, if you've never had apple pie with cheddar cheese, the residents will probably make you at least try it, because that was my experience at the last community engagement.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harrison. There you go. Any other questions or comments on the zoning change application before us right now? Okay, I'm not seeing any more. I did just want to add some of my own final comments. I think this is a really exciting opportunity for the community for many of the reasons that council and delegates have expressed. I also think a really unique part and why I would justify this over any 8-story building, because I'm not a huge fan of heights either, in terms of for planning in our community, but we already, well, not we, Tri-County Mennonite already has the beds approved, and that is huge. When we talk to colleagues across the province, they are desperately trying to get beds, and I think it will be a huge missed opportunity when we already have a community partner who works in the community, wants to expand on their campus of care, and has the approved beds if we didn't approve this zoning, because they're going to need to use their beds. That's tied to provincial dollars and funding. So they're going to have to go somewhere. And I certainly personally would rather see them in Wilmot. I also think as well, the fact that they came forward showing what the proposal was, although it was only a zone change that they were seeking. And as we know, in institutional zoning, we don't have a height limit. I think that that is really the partnership building and thoughtful growth that at least I'm looking for in our community. And I know that also they hosted a public consultation with their residents, as we're aware, because that was in the original report, to inform the potentially impacted residents around. I really think when we talk about aging in place and healthy whole communities, this is one step in that direction. But also I can see this as completely different than somebody coming and asking for an 8-story building that's an apartment building. Even just in the use of it, there aren't going to be patios looking out on neighbors' yards or anything as a long-term care facility. It will just be windows in a building. And I think a lot of the things that people are concerned about can be discussed in the detailed design phase as well. So I'm personally very supportive of this and think it's a really great opportunity. Also pending that it gets approved, I look forward to seeing this happen for our community, plus 500 to 600 new full-time permanent jobs. Is huge for a community like ours, especially when I think many of us and our residents don't want to see us become bedroom communities. With that, I don't see any other questions or comments, so I will call the vote. All those in favor, and that carries unanimously. Now, I did notice, I believe our delegate from item 13.3 has arrived, and that is Raul Dorrego. So I just want to let you know, Raul, we did already, council did pass the item that you were coming to speak on, but you are absolutely still welcome to speak if you would like to. I'm happy to give you your time. Okay, thank you. For those online, he's declined his opportunity to speak, but you are of course welcome to reach out to council as well if you have any further correspondence you'd like to share with us. Okay, thank you. On to item 14.6, and Councillor Cressman does have a conflict, so just noting that. The recommendation is that this report on the zone change application 05-26 Gingrich Road in Baden be received for information, and that council approve the zone change application as set out in the draft bylaw included as attachment B to the report. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Sadhu. And I will turn it back over to Director Martin to present this report.
Thank you, Mayor Solomon. Very briefly, this application proposes to change the zoning of lands that are already designated in the current official plan for employment purposes. This is the next step in facilitating development of employment lands. There was a delay from the time of designation to the zoning to allow for some of the work that was occurring on Gingrich Road. The twinning of a storm sewer under the road allowed for alterations to the flood limits on this site, which optimizes the development opportunity. So once that work was completed, they then proceeded with the zoning application before you, and staff are recommending approval.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments on this one, council? Councillor Wilkinson, is that a hand up? Okay, you may speak.
Through the chair, I'm just curious, Director Martin, if there's been any indication as to what types of development we would anticipate here with this rezoning. Just curious.
Through Mayor Solomon, there is a lot of flexibility. One of the things the zoning does really restrict, though, is uses that would impact the planned residential to the north. So heavy industry realistically wouldn't occur here, but it could be any kind of warehousing, office, small shops. There's multiple opportunities there. We have had people that have connected with us. We've directed them to the estate to see if there's opportunities there. So there's lots of interest. What lands there, I don't know for sure.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, council? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. And on to 14.7. This is the Community Improvement Plan Brownfield Financial Incentive Program. The recommendation is that the report be received for information and that council designate the whole township of Wilmot as a community improvement project area for the purpose of establishing a community improvement plan, and that council approve and adopt the Township of Wilmot Community Improvement Plan Brownfield Financial Incentive Program Joint Tax Increment Grant included as attachment A to this report. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Martin. And I will now turn it over to our Senior Policy Planner, Rachel Green, to introduce this report.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. As a quick recap, brownfield sites are typically former industrial or commercial properties with environmental contamination that can make redevelopment challenging and costly. So the proposed program incentive is a joint tax increment or TIG and will be delivered in partnership with the Region of Waterloo. The name has been adjusted slightly since this was last in front of you to ensure alignment with the region's program. So rather than providing upfront funding, the grant returns the increased property taxes generated after a site is remediated and redeveloped. So it's the same program. It hasn't changed. We've just made some tweaks to make sure that it aligns with the region's program. So applicants must demonstrate eligibility as a brownfield site and complete remediation requirements, including obtaining a record of site condition. And in response to a question at the public meeting from council, this would apply in a situation where contamination is discovered during construction after a permit has already been issued, provided the applicant files a record of site condition. So staff worked closely with regional staff to align the program. This approach provides applicants with access to a larger incentive, creates consistency across the region, and allows Wilmot to leverage existing regional expertise and administrative processes. So following the public meeting held in July, no further public or agency comments were received. Overall, the proposed CIP provides a practical tool to encourage brownfield redevelopment by helping offset remediation costs and leveling the playing field between brownfield and greenfield development.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through Mayor. I mean, I think this is great. It will help with economic development. My question to you is, you had mentioned that it applies if construction has begun and they run into the issue. What about where there's a site where there's already knowledge that there is going to be an issue? Would it apply there as well, encouraging someone to go and to build something that would help our community?
Through the mayor, yes. So normally prior to development, if it was a industrial or commercial property and it's going to be converted to, say, residential, usually there'll be an investigation to see if there's contamination at the outset. And that's when they can start looking into the program, and staff, along with the region and township, will hold a pre-consultation meeting and go through what requirements would be part of being qualified as eligible. And then once that process happens, there's a form, and then we would provide a letter to the applicant, and then final approval would come to council.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I'm not sure, Rachel, if this question is for you or if it's for someone else, and maybe it can't be answered tonight because I didn't think of it until we were in this discussion. I was thinking about Sudbury and in the past 40 years, the significant improvement that has happened in that community, and environmentalists commenting about how environmentally the great improvements that have occurred in the past 40 years. So by designating all of our township as eligible for this, is that along the same line as what happened in Sudbury over the past 40 years? Is there a comparison? Does anybody know? And if nobody knows, it's not fair to spring on a question that I hadn't thought of in advance.
Through Mayor Son, I think it's fair to say I don't think we're in a position to answer whether it's comparable to Sudbury, but in the case of Wilmot, it does provide more flexibility, so it's not a defined area. It would provide the same opportunity throughout the entire township.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Cressman.
Yes, just to add clarity, my interpretation of the entire township was that meant regardless of where the site was located, it would be eligible. And therefore, it wasn't specific to say my backyard is a brownfield site, but it means that, you know, if there is a brownfield site located anywhere in the township, it isn't ruled out in terms of eligibility.
Through the mayor, that's correct.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I actually did have one question. I just wanted to make sure, I know that you've mentioned if they find contamination after the permits that they could apply. This is not retroactive though, correct? Because we've not had a program in place. I just want to make sure we don't suddenly have an influx of people who have remediated brownfield.
So through the mayor, we haven't put a date on, so if there has been a site that has been remediated but not yet started their redevelopment, they could be still eligible.
Okay, but if their redevelopment is done, they cannot come for the ticket
Yes.
program. Okay.
Correct.
All right, thank you for that clarity. With that, I will call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. On to 14.8, and this is the site alteration background report. The recommendation is to receive this for information and that staff be directed to return to council in February 2027 to seek direction on which option to pursue as outlined in the report. Do I have a mover for this? Moved by Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Sadoo, and I will turn it back over to Ms. Green.
Thank you. So the report this evening was prepared in collaboration with Infrastructure Services, and it builds on council's previous direction to explore site alteration bylaw, provides an overview of the current regulatory framework, the township's existing tools, and potential options moving forward. So site alteration involves the placement of fill, removal of soil, or changes to the grading. These activities can support development and improve site conditions, but they can also create impacts related to truck traffic, road damage, dust, noise, drainage, erosion, sedimentation. And so site alteration is already partially regulated through several existing provincial and agency frameworks. So the province regulates excess soil quality and reuse, with requirements generally increasing as projects become larger and more complex, specifically for large projects over 10,000 cubic meters or 800 to 1,400 standard dump trucks of fill. The GRCA also has regulations, and they regulate fill placement over 1,000 cubic meters or 80 to 140 dump trucks within regulated areas such as wetlands, floodplains, and watercourses. The township has several tools available to address impacts associated with fill and grading activities. So for example, through the planning process, currently staff can already require technical studies and secure mitigation measures through development agreements. The township's existing noise bylaw can address concerns related to construction noise and equipment operation. There's an existing traffic and parking bylaw that relates to heavy vehicle parking and truck restrictions. However, township can only regulate roads under its own jurisdiction. So these wouldn't apply to regional or provincial roads. The township also has authority under the Municipal Act to consider additional nuisance-related bylaws addressing concerns such as dust, odors, and vibration. And so the key considerations for council is determining the preferred municipal role in regulating the location, scale, and operational impacts of site alteration activities. So there's a few options that we've kind of looked at. And so the first option A is maintaining the status quo and not introducing a site alteration bylaw. We would continue to rely on existing provincial soil quality regulations, GRCA permitting, and municipal bylaws. This option has the lowest administration and financial impact. However, the township would have limited ability to proactively oversee impacts related to site alteration or require securities to address infrastructure impacts to roads, for example. The second option we looked at, option B, would be regulating large fill sites only, which have the greatest potential to impact roads, infrastructure, and the environment. It would allow the township to permit, have conditions, collect securities, and enter into agreements for large operations to mitigate impacts. And represents a balance between increased oversight and manageable resource requirements. And then third is option C, which is to regulate all site alteration activities from small to large projects. This provides the highest level of municipal oversight, but would require significant commitment of staff time for permit review, inspections, compliance, monitoring, and enforcement, and could potentially require additional staffing resources and ongoing operating funding, but may be offset by permit fees. So overall, this report is intended to help council determine the township's preferred role in regulating site alteration activities. Right now, we're just recommending that it be received for information and bring it back to a future council meeting in February. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Questions, council? Councilor Cressman.
Yes, through you, Mayor, to Manager Green. I'm looking at the two different options. I think certainly at this point in time, B is the one that would catch my eye. I'm wondering 10,000 cubic meters, given at least one active site here in the township, I would assume they surpass that. And do they have an exemption because, quote unquote, they're looking at farming? And so I thought, is that a giant loophole? I am a farmer, but is that a giant loophole that you could drive massive truck through? So I'm just asking the question.
And I'd maybe just tailor it not to that specific site, but in general, is agricultural activity like that a potential loophole?
Through the mayor, the Municipal Act does allow exemptions or requires exemptions for agricultural specific site alteration. So we would have to look and ensure that it meets what is defined as agriculture in that respect, and ensure that if it meets that, then it would be exempt from getting a permit if we were to implement a program.
Thank you. Councilor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Green. And I think this is very timely, and I think we definitely need to have something put into place. My understanding is the abutting municipalities already have something, and so my concern is that there will be more dumping in Wilmot, and we certainly don't need that. My question to you is how many fill operations are there currently operating? Do you know?
From my understanding, 2, but I'll defer to management if they have any other knowledge of any others.
Through Minnesota, no, we're aware of 2 larger operations in the township, and that's all we're aware of at this point.
Any other questions or comments? Councilor Wilkinson.
Thank you through the chair. I know there's one particular site that comes up quite a bit, but I will say that, you know, there is a, I can't remember the exact body that governs it at the moment, but there is definitely tracking and information related to where that fill is coming from online. And if anybody's curious, they can email me. I'm happy to send it to them. It's just escaping me at the moment. But with that said, I mean, I concur with Councilor Cressman. Option B is probably the preferred option when we get there in February. But ultimately, this will be a decision that we're not going to make tonight. So, yeah, we definitely want to see it though.
I did have one question, and it's just on timing. I know right now the recommended motion is to refer back for February 2027. I'm just wondering, does it make more sense to tie it in with budget? And as we don't know with the new council when budget will be coming, the only reason I ask is because 2 of your options, as you noted, do have financial impacts. Curious if that's an issue or if there was a particular reason that February was proposed. I just don't want it to come out of pace with the budget if there is, if council in the future decides on B or C as the option to proceed with.
I'm going to defer to Director Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Solomon. So the February date was more to allow for an opportunity for a new council to be adjusted. There would be public consultation requirements. So in theory, we could tie it to a budget process, but prior to February, there really won't be a significant opportunity to go to a public meeting to advertise, you know, the proposal. So that's where we were looking at the later date. You initially, depending on what option is looked at, there's components of that could come through without significant impacts initially, knowing that if, you know, next stages of that would have financial implications, would allow for the opportunity to be considered at a future budget meeting as well. So future budget meeting 2028. But I guess we can, you know, it's up to council's direction on how they'd like us to proceed at this point. But primarily the date was there to allow for public consultation with a new council after the election, and, you know, new council settled in for a month.
Okay, that answer satisfies my question, Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, Mayor. One further question. Anecdotally, there was always the comment that once a excess soil site had been initiated, it couldn't be regulated. And so I'm wondering, is that a fallacious assumption, or is that if we had option B, that we could in fact regulate something that's existing?
Through the mayor, so should we go down the path of implementing a site alteration bylaw, we'd probably look at some transition policy to be put in there. There would likely not be an opportunity to regulate what's been done, but if there was an increase in the area or the increase in the volume of fill moving forward, that could potentially fall under a bylaw.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. Again, tonight, this is just to receive for information and then have staff bring this back to council in February 2027. So I will call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. On to report 14.9, and this is the Mannheim Service Area Water Allocation Policy. The recommendation is that council receives this report for information and that council approve the bylaw and policy as attached, as attachment A to this report, and that council delegate authority to the Director of Development Services, or in their absence, the Director of Infrastructure Services, to be delegated to make allocation decisions pursuant to the policy as in attachment A. And that the Director of Development Services, or in their absence, the Director of Infrastructure Services, be delegated report to council when an allocation has been assigned pursuant to the policy, which is noted in attachment A, and that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to execute the allocation policy administrative agreement jointly entered into with the Region of Waterloo, City of Cambridge, City of Kitchener, City of Waterloo, and Township of Wilmot to implement the Region of Waterloo allocation policy. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Sadoo, seconded by Councillor Martin, and I will turn it back over to Director Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Salonen. So this report was dealt with to a certain extent with other municipalities earlier. Ultimately, it looks at the water allocation to Wilmot within the Mannheim service area, which is a very small piece of the overall equation, hence our late arrival to council with this. Ultimately, in May, the region approved a region water supply allocation policy that looked at assigning buckets of capacity to municipalities based on growth potential in those areas and official plan designations where growth was going to occur. And then in June of 26, they adopted an interim risk management that looked at, you know, those buckets of allocation, what that number would be in the time frame. So ultimately, in that, Wilmot is allocated 0.01% of the overall piece, which in the July bucket that was allocated would mean one person to Wilmot. Over the course of the risk management process to 2031, it means 17 people. So we're not talking a lot of allocation. We also don't have a lot of planned growth within the service, the Mannheim service area, limited implications. But should those numbers change, should there be additional water, that percentage could mean a larger number and could have some implications for some potential areas in your St. Agatha or Mannheim areas. So we feel it's prudent to be part of that to enter into the agreement that the other municipalities have already entered into, which is one part of the recommendation. And then we've basically, with some minor modifications to reflect Wilmot, the proposed policy is reflective of what Woolwich has already passed to deal with allocation. So it provides, a scenario of what the priorities would be if we were to have a bucket. Again, we're dealing with 17 people to 2031, so it's not a significant piece to deal with, but it provides a framework on how you'd make decisions about allocation going forward. So from that perspective, the idea would be if council were to support this, we would execute the agreement that the other municipalities have already, which would then mean that we would receive our small allocation, and we would have an opportunity to hold on to that until there's a need to allocate.
Councillor Pressman.
I would say this policy is a little bit dripping with irony, but I would say the 19 liters per second that they took well, without our knowledge, 30 liters, sorry, from 2019. Anyhow, I certainly support this, but the question I have, I guess, to either Director Martin or Director Vanderwall is about the Baden well that we know has issues, and they haven't got a clear, it is indirectly connected, I believe, to the Mannheim system to supply some of our water, is it not? Or it's being supplemented, or how is that? So I guess that's the question.
Through Ms. Anna, and I'll attempt to answer. If I've missed anything, then Mr. Vanderwall would be able to respond. But we technically, the system would be, they're connected. It would be a matter of turning the tap in a different direction. But it's not feeding the system at this point. But the infrastructure provides the opportunity that it could in theory, but that isn't part of the current Baden and New Hamburg water system. If those wells were to come online and be part of that, it isn't the way it works presently, but there would be an opportunity for that to occur.
Just to through you, Mayor, to clarify my question, which is Mannheim currently serving Baden because of the challenges with that well, I guess is what my question is.
Sorry, Mayor Son, I missed the part of that question there. So the answer is no, Baden is not serviced by Mannheim.
Any other questions or comments on this report? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. On to 14.10, and the recommendation is to receive the tax arrears status update for information. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Sadoo, seconded by Councillor Martin. And I will turn it over to our Supervisor of Taxation and Revenue, Emily Woon, to introduce this report.
Good evening, Mayor Salonen and members of council. The tax arrears status update report before you tonight provides an update on the township's property tax arrears as of July 31st, 2026, together with an overview of the legislative framework, the collection processes used by finance staff, and the current status of properties identified as being eligible for tax sale this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there questions or comments on this, council? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, through the chair. I guess more comment, I guess, cause for alarm in reading this report when we start to see the numbers of tax sales that could potentially be pursued, and at the same time looking at the number of households that are in arrears. It's a rather large number, and I guess I'm curious to the manager if you've heard an overarching theme as to what's driving the arrears, or could you comment on that at all? Because this is a very high number, obviously.
Through you, Mayor, to council. So I do want to note that the properties that are identified as being in arrears are ranging in balance. So anything greater than a $0 balance is considered an outstanding account. There was no threshold used when deciding to include balances in this report. So we have a number of properties with balances less than $1,000, spanning larger than that. So I just want to note that of the properties that are identified as being in arrears, the 2,936 properties, 1,487 of them have balances less than $1,000. So that's about 51 almost % of those properties with balances less than $1,000, which would be considered lower balances. I do also want to note that there are a number of properties identified that are currently enrolled into a pre-authorized payment plan with the municipality with the expectation that by year end, balances that are outstanding would be collected through those payment arrangements. So as of now, yes, there are properties in arrears, but when we look at the amount of the arrears and also the plans that are in place, we are moving in a direction for those arrears to be mostly paid by the end of the year. Now, in respect to the properties eligible for tax sale, there are 67 properties identified as being eligible for tax sale. When we compare to prior years, last year, tax sale efforts weren't conducted. And from what I can see from prior years, properties 3 years and greater in arrears seemed to be what was used as the benchmark for eligibility. In 2017, legislation changed under the Municipal Act to allow properties 2 years in arrears to become eligible for tax sale, which is what I have used as the benchmark for determining eligibility. So we're seeing an increase in number this year, but from what I can see from prior years, it's different criteria that's being identified in the current year. I do also want to note on the 67 properties that have been identified, the deadline for property owners to contact the municipality is August 31st. As of this past Friday, we've already received almost $200,000 towards the tax sale balance or the tax arrears eligible for tax sale. And so that represents about 22 properties that have either paid their arrears in full, have entered into a payment plan, or have paid sufficient balances to remove themselves from tax sale eligibility for this year. So we are making really great progress already on collecting on those arrears just through our standard collection process without escalating to registration for tax sale.
Councillor Wilkinson?
Thank you. Through the chair, appreciate the depth of that response. I just want to clarify one item. When you say the properties in arrears that are less than $1,000, but you mentioned the pre-authorized payment plan. So are you suggesting that there are a number of houses here that would be in regular compliance, making regular monthly payments, but they're considered in arrears because they're not paying in their quarterly installments? Is that fair?
Through you, Mayor Saladin, yes, that would be correct. So as per the way our system reports, these balances would technically be considered outstanding. However, properties are entered into payment arrangements, provided that they are fulfilled, would bring them into good standing by the end of the year.
Through the chair, just a quick follow-up. Do you know off the top of your head how many properties are part of the pre-authorized payment plan?
Through you, Mayor Salonen, yes, we have approximately 2,000 properties that are enrolled into a pre-authorized payment plan across the different classes of taxation.
Thank you. An additional follow-up. So through the chair, so basically what you're saying is those 2,000 should come into compliance by the end of the year, which means in reality, it's probably 936 properties that are truly in arrears, not making their payments. Is that a fair statement?
Through you, Mayor Salonen, to council, yes, I would agree, provided that those payment plans are fulfilled. We do, there are circumstances where maybe residents move, the payment plans are canceled. We do have residents occasionally default on payment arrangements. So yes, I would hope that those 2,000 properties would come into good standing by the end of the year.
Councillor Martin.
Through you, Mayor Salonen, I guess I'm following up on Councillor Wilkinson's questions, because if I've understood this explanation, and I appreciate that, Manager Wynn, then I guess I would be in arrears. I'm in a monthly payment plan. So I wonder if we should change this because it doesn't make sense to me to call something in arrears when we have a plan in place that has a monthly payment plan, and I've been doing the monthly payment plan for years. So I guess I'm wondering if we should consider making a change on that.
I'd maybe look to Supervisor Woon just in terms of the ability to functionally do that with the reporting technology. I'm not against the proposal. I just kind of want to know the logistics, what that would look like on the back end.
Yeah, and through you, Mayor Sullivan, to council, the financial software that we have is limited in the reporting structure that is available. We say it, I mean, it's categorized as outstanding because if a property owner was to contact the municipality tomorrow and say, I would like to disenroll from my pre-authorized arrangement, any amount that is owing would immediately become past due and subject to penalty and interest. So it is a balance that it's a courtesy that we offer the pre-authorized payment plan as a way to help residents budget their taxation over the year. It is a great collection tool that we use, and I know a lot of property owners are in favor of it. I certainly am as well, but it does not take away from the fact that we are still required to make our payments to the region and the school boards on a quarterly and monthly basis. And these are balances that we are not collecting at time that they are due. We are collecting them by year end. So in that aspect, they would be considered technically outstanding balances.
Does that satisfy your question, Councillor?
Thank you for asking, Mayor Sullivan. To me, it doesn't make sense. I wouldn't call it arrears if we have a bona fide plan, and we're not the only municipality, City of Kitchener. I mean, throughout the province, monthly payment plans are a regular occurrence. So it doesn't make sense to call it arrears from my point of view.
So maybe I would suggest, and this could either be just direction to staff or if somebody wanted to formalize it, but maybe that staff bring back a different language. I would say I'm still interested personally to know, even if people are on a monthly payment plan, from the perspective of we do collect actually the largest portion of our taxes, as we know, go to the region, we collect on their behalf. So technically we are carrying, as Supervisor Woon just noted, we are carrying that cost and covering it going to. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just think having that information is a valid thing for us to be aware of, but I don't disagree with changing the terminology because I was also a little shocked at first when I read the report going, wow, that's a lot of households in our community. So maybe if council's open to it, we could ask, and I would look for staff comment, but if staff could bring back enhanced language to better articulate that and not have it as arrears if people are on payment plans, are there issues from council on that? Councillor Sadu?
A quick question before that. So we're paying our taxes to the region quarterly, I believe. So are we paying any interest? Are we accruing any interest by paying the region and not collecting our taxes from the residents in the meantime?
I would turn to Supervisor Woon, but I know if people are in arrears, the township is the one who takes the hit. And we can charge, I believe it's 15%, is what the deal is. And that's why the region claims it's beneficial for us. But we have to pay them outright, regardless of if we get paid. But Supervisor Woon, if you have anything you wanted to add to that.
Through you, Mayor Sullivan, to council, that is correct. We are still required to remit to the region. We remit monthly, and we are still required to remit to the school boards. That is quarterly, regardless of if we have collected taxes that have been levied. And yes, we do charge penalty and interest. It is 15% annually.
So just before we move on, did we want to give direction to staff then to bring back updated language for this report? Councillor Wilkinson?
Through the chair, I'm not opposed to it. Maybe there is a different way to mention it if they are a pre-authorized payment, but ultimately I think this report is not one that we have regularly seen over the term. But I think ultimately the true arrears is the one that it presents itself at the end of the tax collection cycle. So, you know, I mean, I pay monthly on a pre-authorized plan, so technically I'd be in the same boat as Councilor Martin, but I'm certainly not hearing about it or seeing anything about it. So I mean, I'm not overly concerned. But I think it would be interesting to see what this looks like at the end of the tax collection cycle, truly to see what the real number is of who's in arrears. And then, I don't know, but I also wouldn't be opposed if there's a different way to classify just this segment as in this section. I'd be fine with that.
So Supervisor Boone, I think you've been following the conversation. Is that something that you feel confident you can bring back to council at a future date?
Yes, through you, Mayor Salonen, to members of council. Yes, I can absolutely understand your perspective and I don't disagree. From my understanding, this is the first report of this type that has come forward to this council. And I would hope, it is my intent to provide a year-end update as well. It is something that we should be reporting to council on, ideally like every 6 months, year end, and then partway through the year. And I do anticipate that year end will be in a very different situation. But I certainly can take your feedback, address the verbiage and the language that's been used, and also rework what has been written to provide you maybe a clearer update as to what you're looking for.
Thank you very much. And we do have a list, Councillor Stu and then Councillor Cressman.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I would be in favor of changing the language or the way we report it out. I know when you buy a home, you have the option of, do you want to do it quarterly, do it monthly? Just doesn't sit well with me. I agree with Councillor Martin that if you have the option to do it monthly and then you see this report and then you see you're looped into a pool that says technically you're in arrears. So I would be in favor of changing the reporting so we can see that, you know, as it was mentioned, I think 2,000 homes are in that pre-authorized. So the number looks a lot more favorable, so we can actually break it down and see that, no, they are not technically in arrears, but the 900 some homes are. So it makes the number less staggering. I know when I looked at it, I almost fell out of my chair to think, holy moly, that's almost one full ward worth of homes that are in arrears. So it is reassuring that it isn't actually at the moment in arrears, but I think an enhanced language around the reporting would be great.
Councillor Cressman.
Yes, through you, Mayor. I think the headline that 2 of the council members of Wilmot Township were in arrears would be the one I would be thinking would be important to have, but that's just me because I pay quarterly. But the question I have is related to the other end of the spectrum about personal bankruptcies, mortgage sales. Where do we stand in line as a township in terms of residual value in a home sale? Do we stand behind the mortgage holder and we get the sweeping, so to speak? Or do we stand ahead in terms of priority payment?
Through you, Mayor Salonen, to council, yes, if a property was in tax arrears and ended up in a position of either bankruptcy or, the property was repossessed through the bank, yes, property taxes do equate to a lien, and arrears would be paid out through those processes. So it doesn't happen very often that we receive bankruptcy notice, but in the event that we do, they are reviewed as received to ensure that our interest is identified in those documents as well.
Any other questions or comments on this, council? I did just have one question in terms of if we do unfortunately get to the stage of tax sales. this council did have one almost tax sale, I think early on in our time. But it was brought forward to council, I think it was the week before it was supposed to go on sale. And so at that point, the property was actually identified to council, and it actually resulted in a good news story in that somebody watched the council meeting, contacted a family member of the property owner, and their arrears were addressed and the property was able to be kept. To me, that's a good news story. I don't want to see us having to sell properties for taxes. So I guess I'm just curious going forward, recognizing that we've had a different shift in the financial department, and to your point, this is the first time we've really seen a comprehensive report even on this, which I think is great. But yeah, I guess I want to understand, what does that look like going forward if that process were to happen with any of the properties you've identified?
Through or to you, Mayor Salonen, and to council. So currently I am working diligently with property owners to try to find ways to avoid moving forward in the process. We have about a week left for property owners to still make arrangements with the municipality, and I think, you know, the fact that we've seen 22 property owners come forward so far is great. In the event that a property owner was not able to satisfy one of the options available, a tax arrears certificate would be registered against the property. That would likely be happening end of September, early October. And from that date of registration, property owners have a 1-year cancellation period in which they can pay the sum of all arrears to cancel the tax sale process entirely. If the arrears are not paid within that 1-year cancellation period, we would be moving forward to the next phase, which would be public tender. And the process is long. There's advertisement requirements, deadlines, but property owners would realistically be looking about 1.5 years out from now, maybe even a little bit longer, before it came to the point where a property was listed for public sale.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments on this report? Again, it's just for information this evening. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. On to 14.11, and this is the Ontario Community Infrastructure Funding Advocacy Beyond 2026 report. The recommendation is that we receive this report for information, and that council endorses the resolution supporting MFOA's letter to the Ministry of Infrastructure and requesting the province maintain the current enhanced OSIF funding level beyond the 2026 allocation year, and that council directs staff to forward the endorsed resolution to the Minister of Infrastructure, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Finance Officers Associates of Ontario, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the local member of provincial parliament, and any other parties deemed appropriate. To get this on the floor, may I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by Councillor Martin, and I will invite our treasurer, Tracy Prince, to introduce this report.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors. So the report in front of you is really just to support the advocacy of MFOA to the province to continue the increase introduced in 2022 and beyond. So it ends the end of 2026. And if it's decreased OSIF funding for next fiscal year, it could result in about a 4.67% increase on the tax levy just to make up that portion of it. And then, or we'd be looking at further reducing potential capital investment to offset that loss.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. Through the chair, more comment, maybe a question in there, but I think obviously it makes sense to sign on to this advocacy and send the message upward in hopes that we can continue to see this investment in our infrastructure, specifically given that we have quite a bit to address. You know, the one concern is hearing that it would result in a 4.67 levy increase. I don't necessarily share the same perspective. I think my hope would be that when we are looking at our 10-year capital plans, that there might be multiple options. And that could be one where it's maintained, one where maybe it looks at a 2% increase, or one that potentially spreads out the spending that was taking place over the course of time, so as to avoid a rather large increase just related to the loss of this funding. I mean, we knew that it had an end date, so the hope is that we would hopefully plan for that. But that would just be my sort of brief comment as we head into budget season. You know, I guess we should probably anticipate that this is gone and then spread out the spending appropriately. But that's all I would say on it.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. The $736,000 shortfall, which is what we've been used to getting in addition to what we used to get. Director Vanderwall, when we are looking at our infrastructure projects for next year, have you planned that spend based on what we were receiving?
Through the mayor, yes, we would be anticipating similar spending with minor increases to keep up with our infrastructure deficit as we have.
Any other questions or comments then? Okay, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Treasurer Prince, for bringing this forward. One positive thing is we are not the only municipality in this boat. And AMO and Roma are continuing to advocate, as well as when Councillor Cressman and I were up in Ottawa last week at AMO, I did have some conversations with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing in particular on this, as well as the Minister of Finance. Have had other conversations with his team about this, and what they are currently saying, but take it with a grain of salt because I have yet to see anything in writing. But currently they are stating that they are well aware of this, and it is something that they are hoping to look to make municipalities whole. Again, not holding my breath because they've also said that we'll be made whole on other funding. But I do appreciate you bringing this forward, and I do believe that this is a part of the long-term financial planning works that will be coming forward in the budget for the next council as well. So with that, again, this is to receive for information tonight, to endorse the resolution supporting the MFOA's letter, and then to circulate to the appropriate parties. I will call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. On to our bylaws for this evening, and the recommendation is that they be read a first, second, and third time and finally pass an open council. I would look for a mover. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Cressman, and all those in favor. And that carries unanimously. I am going to turn it over to Councillor Wilkinson to chair while I introduce my motion.
So we move to notices of motions. I will call on Mayor Salonen to bring forward her notice of motion, please.
Thank you. So this notice of motion council's had for a while now, because it was originally on our July never-ending council meeting. But really why I'm bringing this forward is noting that we have a lot of amazing local businesses in our community, including agricultural operations that are essential to our economic vitality, really, of our community. And I think it's important to note the great things that are going on. Some other municipalities do have recognition programs, and I'm really just hoping that council ask staff or direct staff to prepare a framework for a business appreciation program. This would include eligibility criteria, nomination processes, and recognition methods. I'm not looking for this to be a make-work project or a financial implication. I'm really looking for it to be more of a good news opportunity and a way to acknowledge our local businesses. Right now, we do things like produce scrolls of recognition for businesses, but it's really on a request basis, and they would even need to know that that exists. I think this takes a more proactive approach and is a good community building opportunity. But like I said, not looking for it to be a make work or add any cost. So I'm not looking for compensation or getting into making big plaques or anything, really just looking for an opportunity to celebrate the great businesses that make Wilmot a fantastic place to live and work. So I'd be looking for a seconder. I think Councillor Dunstall there, but I'll turn it back to the chair.
Seconded by Councillor Dunstall. Are there any questions for Mayor Sawin on this? Oh, Lillian or Councillor Dunstall.
Thank you, through you. Chair, the only comment I have is that I'm really upset that I didn't think of this. And I support it wholeheartedly.
Councillor Cressman?
Yes, just through you, Chair. The question I had was, is there a time of year you would like to see this award be made?
Thank you, through you, Chair. So I'll be honest, what brought on the thinking about it was the Citizen of the Year Awards, which are at the Fall Fair. So every September. However, I am open to really what staff find, or if council or the community has a particular interest. There are some communities, for example, that every month in their council meeting recognize a local business. Some municipalities do it per ward, so each councillor gets to bring forward and propose. So I don't have a set defined idea. I really just more so want to get some framework and understand what could be feasible in Wilmot.
Any additional questions? Okay, so calling the vote, all those in favor? And that carries unanimously. And I will cede the chair back to Mayor Sawin.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilkinson. We do have another notice of motion in front of us from Councillor Cressman. It would require a 2/3 vote of council to be entertained. So I'm assuming Councillor Cressman is going to move waiving the notice of motion, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. So this vote is just on waiving notice, and then I'll let Councillor Cressman speak if the notice is waived. So all those in favor? That carries unanimously. I will now turn it over to Councillor Cressman to introduce his motion.
So this motion is a result of what happened in Mannheim on August 8th and 9th. It was brought to my attention on the 9th at about 4:30 in the afternoon of issues happening in Mannheim. So I will go through the whereases here. Whereas the township received more than a dozen noise complaints related to an unsanctioned event that occurred on Bleams Road in Mannheim area on August 8 and 9. And whereas the incident highlighted concerns regarding the township's ability to respond to noise complaints occurring during weeknights and weekends when regular bylaw enforcement services are not provided. And whereas the township's current noise bylaw only is applicable between the hours of 11 p.m. and 8 a.m., limiting the township's ability, and I would say as well, Waterloo Regional Police Service's ability to address certain noise-related complaints occurring outside of those hours. And whereas residents have expressed concerns regarding both the hours which the noise bylaw applies and the township's ability to respond to noise complaints when they occur outside of regular business or bylaw enforcement hours. Therefore, be it resolved staff to investigate and report back to council on options and alternatives for providing bylaw enforcement to noise complaints during weekends, during weeknights and weekends, including potential service delivery models, in-house or contracted, response protocols with the Waterloo Regional Police Services and associated costs, And B, that staff review the township's noise bylaw and report back to council with options for amendments that would provide the township with the ability to regulate unreasonable noise throughout the day and evening. And C, that as part of the staff review, the noise bylaws and enforcement practices of neighboring municipalities to identify best practices and provide recommendations for potential amendments to the township's noise bylaw and enforcement approach, and that the report to council no later than Q1 of 2027. So I guess I'd look to move that. And
Councillor Wilkinson is seconding. Councillor Wilkinson, did you want to speak to it as a seconder?
Through the chair, I like the spirit of this and where Councillor Cressman is going. This is something I've heard and even in just having discussions with our bylaw department. I think there's one thing that I'd like to see even in addition to this while they're looking, not that we need to make an amendment to it, but we, as I've become aware, do not have the tools to even measure noise, which is of concern. So I hope that we can, in addition to this, look at making sure that we acquire the equipment in order to measure.
Councillor Cressman?
yes, I responded on the Sunday the 9th, was informed that this has happened on subsequent occasions in previous years. Only this year, it went all night. In previous years, it stopped at 11. Certainly, we as the township hadn't been informed of previous year complaints. I actually sat in the kitchen of an individual I knew right across the road from where this was all happening. People were walking in from Kitchener or that direction and walking up the driveway. The police responded after they received numerous complaints. The police officer was very responsive. He went in on site and said, I can't do anything now, but if this goes on beyond 10:30, he gave that as a line in the sand, knowing that 11 o'clock was the only time that he could do anything. You will receive a fine for every minute the noise is beyond 11. But he was very concerned with the number of residents that were so upset after 2 nights of this and restarting at 3 in the afternoon on Sunday, that he was expressing concern that residents would not try to walk up the driveway because they didn't know what reception they would receive from what was happening. People were camping out in the adjoining fields. Wheat had been harvested, wheat stubble was there, people were camping. So regardless to say, there was a lot of upset residents, and I see this as an important initiative to indicate that we're addressing and that we're going to have something that will ensure not just this, but other situations can be addressed into the future.
Any other questions or comments on this? All right. Seeing none, I would just say thank you, Councillor, for bringing this forward, because I don't know if I got as many complaints as you, but I know that I did as well. And I appreciate that we're looking to close the gap on this service that we didn't quite realize was a problem. And hopefully that will make residents pleased as we go forward and give bylaw and our WRPS the opportunity to actually enforce what we have in place. With that, I will call the vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. For announcements, I do have a few. I wanted to note the New Hamburg Fall Fair is happening September 17th to 20th, and that is down at the fairgrounds at Norm Hill Park in New Hamburg. I also want to wish best of luck to those headed back to school in the next few weeks. And with that, a reminder that the speeds in front of Sir Adam Beck and Waterloo Oxford do go back to the school speed times. So starting September 1st, I think it's between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. It will be a 40-kilometer zone. And then after those hours, it will be 60 kilometers and 60 kilometers on weekends. But just remember that because I'm sure WRPS will be out ticketing. I also wanted to note that the township's official plan is now posted on the provincial website for the EOR posting for comment. So if people wanted to add additional comments to the province, they can do so. And other than that, just a reminder that our next regular council meeting is to be scheduled on Monday, November the 9th at 6 p.m. And I will turn it over to Councillor Dunstall. I believe also has some exciting news.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I am excited. I'm very pleased to announce that our Veterans Crosswalk is scheduled tentatively. I don't want Director Vanderwall to lose his mind, but it is scheduled for the first week of September or thereabouts, and we will certainly be publicizing that. And I have to say, this has been a true community event. We are a community effort. We have been working with the Board of Trade, of course, with the New Hamburg Legion, with the township, and especially with all of those who contributed to make this happen. You know, my husband's grandfather got the Croix de Guerre for capturing 200 enemy soldiers at the end of the war. And he was just a kid himself. And when I think of those things, those young men going out to war and women, it is an honor to be involved in this initiative. So I just want to make sure, keep an eye out. We will be publicizing it, and it will be installed on Huron Road, and looking forward to it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other announcements? Okay, seeing none, we did not have closed, therefore we have no business arising from it. So I'd look for a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Sadoo. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. And adjournment, Councillor Cressman, seconded by Councillor Sadoo. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you and have a great night.